I'm Jim Knight, co-founder of the Instructional Coaching Group, and you're listening to Coaching Conversations, where I talk with coaching experts from around the world so that all of us can learn better ways to make an unmistakably positive impact on the people around us. Dr. Natasha Sistrunk Robinson, now you are one of my favorite people, and we haven't talked for a long time, so I'm thrilled we get to have this conversation. How have you been since we last talked?
Busy, crazy, taking one day at a time. A lot of grace, friend.
So if you could share with people just a little bit about yourself who may not know you, I'd be mighty grateful.
Yeah, I'm as you said, I'm Dr. Natasha Sistrunk Robinson. I'm a Black girl from the small rural town of Orangeburg, South Carolina. And since we're talking to educators, I like to tell people that that's a town where we had two historically Black colleges and universities. So we have the public University of South Carolina State University and the private University of Claflin University. And so that was a very important part of my formation as a young person. I left that place and went to the United States Naval Academy. And so I pursued, I actually have a bachelor's of science degree in English. So I was an English major, but it's a very technical STEM focused school. And so I was able to get a lot of that core foundational work in the science and math and engineering. And so I graduated from there. And somewhere between those things, after graduation, I got married, had a kid. Actually, our one offspring is preparing to launch. So she graduated high school a couple weeks ago. She's getting ready to go to University of North Carolina, Charlotte. So we're excited to send her off there. My husband and I have been married for 21 years. He's a prior Marine, so I met him when I was in the military. I served 6 years as an officer in the Marine Corps. I was a financial management officer by trade. Left there, went to Department of Homeland Security, left there and started my higher education work and my entrepreneurship journey. So I am a social entrepreneur. I do leadership development through coaching, consulting. I have a nonprofit where we provide leadership education for Black girls and young women, as well as I'm a writer. So I write and I speak all across the country, sometimes across the world. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm a Carolinian, though. I reside now in Durham, North Carolina. And this is our third time in North Carolina, the first time in Durham. But I like being other places, but I seem to come back home to the Carolinas. And so I'm a Carolina girl.
Well, and there's a couple things you didn't say. In addition to those things you said, one is you're just a spectacular communicator. You gave one of the best presentations my wife has ever seen, and you and Jenny have kind of become friends since then. And
Yep,
you were my coach for a while, so you
that's
coached me.
true. That's true.
You were developing as a coach. It really helped me think through. I think a topic a lot of people are concerned with balance in my life and how to do things.
Mm.
And I'm doing better. I think things are going in a good direction with respect to that. Walking 4 or 5 miles a day, and other things are going on. And it all started way back with our coaching conversation. So you've affected my life, not just through your ideas, but through your coaching.
Oh, thank you so much, Jim. That's very gracious of you.
So one of your big themes is the concept of leadership. One of the things I thought we could talk about today is focusing on leadership. And you've talked, maybe we could talk about first off, leadership in general, what we mean by
Hmm.
leadership or what you mean by leadership. And we can maybe go back and forth a bit on that. And then in particular, one of the things, of many things you're doing, but one of the things you're doing is really working with black and brown girls who
Hmm.
who have to get through their time out of school, and it's helping them develop leadership skills and helping them
Absolutely.
flourish as leaders themselves in the community, in their lives. And then I thought maybe we could take from that some ideas generally about leadership. When we think about leading in our community or in our schools or in our families, what are just some things you've learned about leadership that you want to talk about? So let's start with the first question. Does that sound okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So when you talk about leadership, what do you mean? How do you define what leadership is?
Yeah, I'm still working through that because I think part of the challenge we have with leadership is that we think about it in one way and we have a vision of what a leader looks like and what a leader is. And what I found in my work, especially when I'm working with women, and I work with women and men through coaching, but certainly the women I work with all across the country and the world, I get to coach virtually, is that because we have this perception of leadership and maybe those women don't fit that perception, then they automatically negate themselves or assume that they're not leading when the things they're
Mhm.
actually doing is actually leadership. So I like to talk about leadership as first about about our being before our doing. And so the being, how we show up in the world, how that impacts the lives of other humans, how we connect with other humans, and how the actions that we take or the words that we say, or the skills and talents that we have, how does that impact the lives of other people? And so, because I think leadership is about mission, like what are we focused on? What are we trying to accomplish together? But it's also about people, like how are we connecting with other people to get that particular thing or that work done?
I'm wondering, when we think about the work you do and all the time you've spent working in particular with women and young women of color, do you find that their stories inhibit their ability to lead, that they have to almost retell their story of themselves because they're maybe being defined by other people's perceptions of who they are and what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, a good point. I think we all have story. And the challenge is that if we don't take ownership and agency, if you will, of our own stories, then other people will tell stories about us, not just individually, but collectively as a people. And that can be whoever you define your tribe or community of people to be. And so, one of the things I do as forming leaders, of, across generations, which is what I do, and not just men, not just women, but men as well, and girls, and young people, is helping them to understand that part of your self advocacy, part of your self leadership is learning your own story, telling your story as you feel safe, and with honesty and integrity, and sharing that with other people so that you don't allow other people to define who you are, that you can tell them who you are. And then that will set a stage for how it is that they are to respond to you. So I think that's important. Like the narratives that we share, actually, is part of my dissertation work. As a Black woman, there's so many ways that other people have tried to define people who look like me. And part of our human dignity is really saying, no, 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 you don't get to do that. That I get to do that for myself.
Yeah, and I think in organizations it can get complicated because, not everything's going well all the time. There are things that aren't going well, and people will want to blame you for the
Yeah.
fact that things aren't going well. And no doubt there are ways in which what we do causes the problem, but I think we can really limit ourselves by thinking that everything is going wrong as our fault. And we have to rethink the narrative to say, well, look, I have solid ground to stand on. Here are the things I
Mhm.
believe, and here's what I'm trying to do. And I think as a leader, getting to that point where I have faith in my beliefs, I know where I stand, so I can speak up. Standing on solid ground I think that is something I've been thinking a lot about recently, even for me in my position,
Mhm.
privileged position. So does that
Mhm.
resonate with you as making sense?
I think one of the things that's clear to me is that for a woman that's been raised in a certain cultural context, is that in the West, particularly in when you're in a predominantly white institution, so much of the leadership and how we look at it is what an individual is doing and whether or not the thing that the individual is doing is advancing his or her best interests.
Mm.
So we're doing certain things because we want to be seen as an expert. We're doing certain things because we want to make a certain amount of money, because we want to be promoted, because we want to be respected, because we want a sense of belonging. And that's very much an individualistic mindset. Now, I'm not saying all those things are wrong. I think, all of us want to be belong somewhere. But what I find culturally is that Black women, for sure, we have this history of leading communally. And so it's not about whether I did something wrong or whether I'm blaming her for doing something wrong. It's about what are we doing together? How are we advancing the communal good together?
Mm.
How are we making our families better, our schools better, our churches better, our jobs better? Because we sink or swim, if you will, we rise or fall together. And so I think that's something that's perhaps unique, certainly in my cultural context, that we're not just thinking about how I can personally advance, but how I can advance for the greater good and open doors and create access and opportunities for other people.
Yeah, you're making me think too that as I think about this, about the difference between doing things for external reasons versus doing things for internal reasons. So if
Yeah.
we know what our beliefs are, as you said, purpose, what our purpose is, what we're trying to accomplish, we know where we're grounded, what are our values, what are our beliefs, and then we act in accordance with our values and beliefs, as opposed to, oh, I think I'm a leader, so I should do these things without that grounding. I call that outside in versus inside out. Real
Absolutely.
change happens from the inside out, is how I would see it.
I agree. I agree.
So I think I want to ask about what's the work you're doing, but I would like you just to sort of, and you've written about this in your books, but just to sort of tell your story. How did you come to become the person you are, the leader that you are? Your story is a
Sure.
great story.
Yeah, well, people ask the question, they ask this question all the time, are leaders born or made? And I say both, right? And so some leaders are formed, they're nurtured, they are shaped into becoming a leader. So Malcolm Gladwell, you read his book Outliers, what he talks about is that, it requires that 10,000 hours to become an expert, in a thing, to become great and excellent in a thing. But he also talks about that you really need these unique moments in time and these unique places and being connected to the right people. And that's been a journey of my life that I've been in situations where they've been uniquely positioned of the right place and the right time and people. And so for me personally, for example, I was born a leader. I came out like that. I'm the oldest of three children. I'm the one that, when I spoke, people listened. I was voted student body president in middle school by my peers after running a campaign. The same thing happened in high school. And so I was born a leader, but just because I'm a born leader doesn't mean I don't work to cultivate those leadership skills, which I do, and I do very intentionally and have done so my entire life. And so I talk about the people and the places that allowed that formation to happen because, for example, a teacher, I may share this at the conference, but when I graduated high school, I was preparing to graduate high school, my senior year of high school. I was already planning to go to college on a full scholarship in sixth grade. I was making decisions in sixth
Hmm.
grade to put me on that path. So by the time I graduated high school in the late 90s, I had been accepted to multiple schools. I had full rides to multiple schools. One of those schools was the Naval Academy. And my Western civilization teacher was a white guy who I took his class in ninth grade. And we maintained a relationship all throughout my high school. And still to this day, we still check in. He was the one who said to me, I was in a Title I school, a predominantly African American school, a low income school, and I was at the top of my class. And he was the one who said to me, like, sweetheart, you've done well here. This is not the real world. You need to go out and compete, with other people in the real world because I believe you have the ability to fly with the best of them. And that was one of a few conversations that made me choose the Naval Academy in opposed to the other schools I had full rides to. So that was a person that was in a place. I graduated from the Naval Academy, the first class post 9/11. And so that's a very unique thing. So I went into a military environment that, in a world stage that was not at peace. This was a wartime thing. And so the ways that I was formed as a leader in that place was very different than someone who was my same age, going to college, getting a college education, and just trying to take tests and write papers. I was doing those things. But in addition to doing those things, I'm preparing to go into an environment as a Marine Corps officer to say, whether or not I make good decisions, not only will people not get the mission done, but people literally could lose their lives. And so I was just formed in a completely different way. And I'm a 22-year-old thinking that way. And so that's why I say I think people are shaped very uniquely by place and by time and by other people. And that tends to shape the way that the leader is formed. And so I think we all have not that story, but we have unique stories. And sometimes, even when those things that happen in our lives are very traumatic or bad, we can sometimes use that as a way to discount our offering to the world or a way to keep us down or depressed or sometimes even see ourselves as a victim, or we can also take those things and say, every single thing that's happened in my life, there was a purpose in it. It might not even been a good purpose, but I can use that to shape how I lead and how I show up and impact the lives of other people that I get to interact with. And that's really what I do in the ways that I coach and mentor other leaders.
So I know your story. In fact, we have another podcast somewhere on our thing where you talk more about your your experiences at the Naval Academy. But is it the case you think that even the challenges you face, the setbacks that are, or at least the blockages in front of you, or the comments of other that are destructive or racist, that even those that can be used in productive ways to kind of forge your mettle, so to speak, as a leader? Is that how you see it?
Absolutely. I think, one thing, one thing we're missing, certainly on our national stage in this present moment, is character.
Hmm.
That's one thing we're missing on our national stage. And um, I have been honored and privileged to be formed by leaders of character.
Mm.
And it's been important to me to show up in the world as a leader of character. And when I think about that, these hard things, these difficult things, and I want to be very clear, I'm not pacifying and saying they're
Right.
not, oh, get over it. I think that's very important to say, because some things are very horrific and they're worthy of grief and lament, and we need help and support and therapy and counseling, those types of things. And so I want to be very clear about that. And what I'm saying is that all of those things that we go through, we don't have control over how other people treat us. We do have control over how we respond. And part of that response is, okay, this is the reality of my life. How does that shape the person that I am becoming, for good or for bad? And how does that make me a more resilient person? Sometimes we use that word, sometimes overuse that word. But I think persevering and having resilience and maintaining your integrity in a space, even when people aren't treating you well, is a learned skill. And I think it's something we learn with time and practice, and we don't learn it by being in good environments with great people. We learn it most often by being in bad environments with people that are not behaving well.
Hmm. That's so interesting. So you were born a leader, and I think I've seen that. You were an athlete when you were in high school. You set
That's
records
correct.
as an
Middle
athlete.
school, middle school. I started racing competitively in middle school.
And
Yeah.
then you went to the Naval Academy, then you worked for President Obama, and
I didn't work for President Obama.
you didn't have an office next to his?
I did not. I mean, I was down the street, but I was not, no, I did not have an office. That's
President,
it.
President Obama's government, let's put it that way.
Yes,
Um,
yes, yes.
and then you've gone on to lead in so many different ways. But you're not saying that leaders are born necessarily. What you're saying is who you encounter and how you deal with the experiences you have are important too. And so what I see you, correct me if I've got this wrong, but what I think hear you doing, what I see you doing with your Freedom Schools work is you're trying to put the good people in the path of people so they can develop as leaders. Is that a fair explanation of the Freedom Schools project?
So I'm just getting into the Freedom Schools world. So I just got back from the Children's Defense Fund. They've been hosting Freedom School for many years now, and I've been following that work, but I haven't gotten directly involved with it. And so my nonprofit, because our focus is on leadership education, and we use, one of our core values is knowledge, and so education is a very important part of how we form young people to become leaders. And so what we found, at least in the training that I got last week with Freedom Schools, is there's a lot of alignment in our philosophy of thought and how we cultivate young people, how we encourage young people to grow in their minds and knowledge and have agency over that leadership. So I think those things are important. But what I would say, especially for your audience, Jim, is extremely important, is that regardless of whether we believe leaders are born or made, is this, that each of us can have the influence and the impact, and this is its own way of leadership in the lives of other people. And when I think about teachers, I believe I have so much respect for teachers and how teachers shape the minds and hearts of young people. And I've seen that not just in my own personal life, but in the lives of other people. So just case in point, this training I went to last week, there were a lot of community leaders, there were a lot of advocates, there were a lot of volunteers, but there were also a lot of educators that saying, yes, I work, during the academic school year, but I'm going to take my summer, and some of this may be, a desire for more income, but would also guess and suspect, in talking to them, I know it's because they just love children and they are committed wholeheartedly to education. And so, what they're saying in that training environment, saying, listen, we understand that children need to be fed in the summer, and we're going to make ourselves available to make sure that happens. We understand that children need to be in a structured environment where they can be safe, and we're going to ensure that that happens for 6 weeks out of the summer. We're going to ensure we understand that children need to continue to sharpen their mind, and they need to not have this slump, the slump we have in the summer of them losing everything they learned. And so you spend the first 3 months of the school year trying to catch them up or remind them what they learned in May. We're going to ensure that doesn't happen by making sure that they're reading every day and that they are doing these good reading comprehension skills. And so that's all important stuff. That's education, that's leadership, that's communal work. But then the last part of this is that we're going to make sure that as they're reading books by people who look like them, or authors who come from their environments, people who understand them. And so what they're doing in that latter piece is affirming the identity of a young person. To say you're not othered in the literature that you're getting, that you are the center of the focus, and people are speaking directly to you and they understand your environment. And therefore, you can go into another world if it's fiction, or you can better assess the real world that you're living in if you're reading nonfiction. And you can do that in a community with other people where you are affirmed and you are loved. And that's what teachers do every single day. Teachers do that every single day for all kinds of all kinds of young people, whether they're privileged or not. And I just believe firmly that teachers are among our best leaders. And with when we look at what we're facing in our country now, so much of it, I believe, is because we do not currently have leaders that have been formed in such a way where they are understanding their own human dignity, that they are affirming the human dignity of other people, that they care about actual like knowledge, like you have to actually read, and that you're processing that in community with other people to say, okay, now that we have knowledge, that we have facts, that there is indeed something that we call truth, and we can assess that information in community and how that impacts the lives of other people so that we can lead for the greater good is really what I believe great teachers do.
Mm. So in your links program, I don't know if it's called the links program, your nonprofit link,
Leadership links.
right? So do you want to say something more about how you develop the leadership skills of the young girls who participate in the project?
So Leadership Links is our 501(c)(3) nonprofit. We are North Carolina-based nonprofit, but it's a national nonprofit. Our programs are hybrid, so we have young people participating at all across the country. And what we do is we provide leadership education that facilitates character development, and we say impactful living and spiritual development. So we're developing these leaders holistically. We use mentoring as a tool for that, and so we're doing group mentoring, small group mentoring. We invest in small groups of people over long periods of time. And so young people come into our program in sixth grade and they come back year after year. So we don't have an events driven kind of work. We have a purposeful kind of life on life type of work. And we do that from sixth grade to 12th grade, which is a 7-year investment. And we see young people come through our program from the time they're in middle school all the way now. And now we're so honored because we have about 24, we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary in August. So we have about 24 young people in college. All of our young people that are active in our mentoring program in their senior year, we have 100% acceptance rate into college. And so they go to college and they're
Wow.
doing well. This spring, actually, we just graduated our first college graduate, Naval Academy graduate, and she's becoming a Navy pilot. And so she's going to be training for that this summer. And so we do that long-term investment work. So that's one of the things that we do. That includes a curriculum of reading. That includes helping them develop character traits, not just talking and reading about it, but how do you actually practice character traits in your with your peers, in your family, in your intergenerational relationships. We do that important work. And then lastly, we create access and opportunities for them. And so what I've found in my life, being a global leader, someone who speaks across the globe and travels quite a bit, and you do a lot of this travel too, but what I've found is that a lot of people, young people in particular, um, if they can't dream or see something that's possible for them, then they don't have much to aspire to. And so if you have a young person in the environment and if all they see is, people selling drugs or doing drugs and domestic violence and abuse and addiction, then that's what they think is going to be their life. But if you take them outside of their block, you take them outside of their city, you take them outside of their state, you take them outside of the country and say, you know one thing, there's a big world out there. And that big world is waiting for people like you to show up and contribute to it. And that's what we do. So, part of what we do every year through our mentoring program is we close out the mentoring season with what we call a leadership experience tour. And we think about this as the Ghanaian term is a Sankofa. And so it's a go back and get it. And so we take them to a very particular place for them to discover the history of that place, the leaders that were raised up in that place, and then we're having dialogue about how that exploration impacts the persons that they are, the leaders they are becoming, and the challenges they're facing today. So we do that every single year. We just completed our fifth tour to this was the year we went to South Carolina for the first time. But then now I'm preparing in this present moment, I'm preparing for our biggest endeavor because we're doing our first global leadership experience tour and we're charting the Underground Railroad North. So we're taking a 14-day bus tour from North Carolina to Canada, following the footsteps of Harriet Tubman. And
Mm.
so that's going to be a dynamic experience. And so all the times your people have been trying to reach me, that's where my, my attention and energy has been. But we are excited about it. It's going to be an intergenerational experience. We have about 20 travelers going with us, including 9 young people, middle school and high school students. And it's just going to be a life-changing experience for them. And they're going to come back better people and, young people prepared to lead and engage the world in a different way.
Can you sort of tell the story of a child or a young woman who comes to be a part of your group and the transformation that takes place? What have you seen happen with people in the last 5 years?
Yeah, the last 10 years, I could tell
10
you.
years,
So
right?
yeah, 10 years. This is we just completed our 8th year of mentoring for girls. And then we have a young women's program as well. We're piloting that program out. And so we're building that out into a 4-year program. We just completed our 3rd year there. But with girls, and my daughter is among them. So my daughter started the program in 6th grade. She graduated in May. She's going to college. So we graduated 4 high school students that are all going to college this fall. But what we find is that when families come to us, particularly when they come in early in 6th grade, they're coming for a few reasons. Number one, um, they are either sometimes they go Google and they look for girls leadership. So they
Mm.
know there's leadership skills in their young person and they want to cultivate those skills, which is a great thing. And we know the research we've done, we have like an asset. A evidence-based, kind of method of training, and so we know, like for example, how Harvard Business School did research about, around that age, girls start to lose their confidence in leadership. They start to, and their parents start to lose it as well, and their peers start to not see themselves as leaders, and they also start to lose interest in STEM around that time or confidence in STEM. And so we're catching them at a very critical time. And so the parents are saying, I'm either looking for girls leadership. Some parents are sending their young people to us because they're saying, we see that you are aligned with our values. And so we're looking for a third place that's going to reinforce the values that we're sharing with our young people at home. But sometimes the honest truth is that these young people come and they don't want to be. They don't want to be there. They'd rather be doing something else on Saturday than being with us, chiefly sleeping, right?
Mm.
And so, it takes a while to kind of crack through that young person. To help them understand that this is a psychologically safe place, that we are affirming their identity, that we believe in them, that we are someone that's committed to them for life, and we believe in that work. And so, and that's a beautiful thing of making a long-term investment, because if we were just kind of in and out and just doing an event, then they can just ride us out, but just kind of say, I'm going to kind of cross my arms and just not do anything. But they can't do that because we're committed to coming back, and we do that year after year. And so sometimes it's a quick turnaround in our summer programs. Sometimes, normally that happens around Wednesday. If we have a week-long program, that we see that shift, that I don't want to be here, they're honest about it. And then come Friday, they're crying because they don't want to go home. So that's a beautiful thing. But in our mentoring program, sometimes that shift takes 6 months. Sometimes it takes 2 years. We just had a young person that just changed her posture after 2 years in the program. And again,
Mm.
that's a beautiful wonderful thing because now she's excited about what's next. And we are excited for her about what's next, not just in her life, but how she's being shaped in this community and what she's going to offer the world as a result of that shaping and that communal support. And accountability is another word I like to share. So we see that happening all the time. In addition to the education that we provide, in addition to the leadership development, in addition to the character development, we're teaching very important soft skills. We're teaching very important life skills. We're teaching very important skills for workplace and workforce development, right? That's extremely important. So we talk about everything from financial management and budgeting to cultivating your public speaking skills and giving them opportunity to practice those skills to what does it mean to be to network, and how do you have a conversation and how do you communicate with people when you're not on an electronic device. Like these are important life skills we're teaching them so that they're functional when they leave, and they're supposed to leave their parents' home at some point.
Right.
And so we are preparing them for those important you know moves and transitions in life. And in some way, I think COVID has done, it's been very difficult as far as the socialization of our young people, and their mental health and their ability to be resilient and their social intelligence. So, COVID has done a number on our young people in that. And so we have to do that extra work to kind of bring them out of whatever those shells are, whether that's just being glued to their phones or being isolated, because there's a big world out there waiting on them, and that needs them. And we need them to be able to show up to meet the demands, and to answer the challenges that we have or that we are facing in our country and in our world.
Oh, that's fascinating and wonderful to help unleash the potential of young people so they can see that, there's a lot more you can accomplish to see
Absolutely.
that, 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 that growth. So in your studies, in your writing, in your work, in your doctorate, you've been focused on leadership. What are a few things you could tell us about as we lead our families, as we lead in schools, as coaches or administrators, as we lead as teachers, as we lead ourselves? What are a few things we should be thinking about with respect to leadership based on all of your experience?
Yeah, I think we want to be thinking about, I think there's a lot of things to think about, but one thing
Right.
I think it's important as leaders that um, we talked about balance earlier briefly, that we have created for ourselves a community that is supportive and encouraging for when the days get hard and for the days when we want to quit. I think that's very important that we are caring for our own selves, our mental health, our emotional well-being, our relationships, so that we can be our best every day. And I think it's easy for us to let those important things, whether that's working out or eating well or just having joy and picking up a hobby, to go to the wayside because the needs that we face in our daily lives are so urgent. And it's something I have to remind myself of, like even, just in my personal life, I'm a middle-aged woman. I'm caretaking for my father who lives in another state. I have a child that's transitioning. And I was like, oh, I don't feel good in my body. So I have to make some changes about what I'm doing. And so I think we have to do that. We have to care for ourselves well and not see that as selfish and not see that as an afterthought. Because if we are sick and we don't feel well or we die prematurely, then we are no benefit to the people that love us and we're no benefit for the community that needs us. So I think that's important. And I think the other part of that is making sure that we have our, like, find our people, that we have a community of people that can support us in things. And sometimes those people are going to be face to face. This is actually a good thing about technology, that we can connect with other people, and sometimes we definitely need to do that, people that are outside of our spaces. This is where coaching comes in, right? That someone who is unbiased and someone who is not impacted by your decisions can come in and be a good sparring partner, a good accountability partner, a good support and encourager and challenger to you, to ensure that you're showing up your best and that you're doing your best work. And so I think just cultivating that right community and support system for yourself is also something important that leaders need to do. Because when we look at the leadership that we're facing in our country today, like, we don't get the leaders that we're seeing just like, they don't wake up like that. There's a lot of small steps and missteps that have been taken to get us to a place where we have leaders that don't have character. And so we want to be thinking about, okay, what intentional steps do I take so I can be a leader of character and so I can support the other leaders that are doing good in our community so that we can be our best for the community that needs us to be our best.
You're an inspiration, Natasha. I'm so
Mhm.
grateful. Very much looking forward to seeing you at TLC.
I'm
And
looking forward to being there. I've been wanting to come for so long. I'm excited to be there.
no,
Finally.
you're going to love it. The people are that come are just absolutely wonderful. And you talk about a community, and you talk about having your people and mentors and people who inspire you and help you be grounded. It's 1,000 people or more that are just like that. So it's going to be great. But they're going to be blown away by you. Your message of character, of inside out change, of principles, having the courage to be yourself. Those are, and then all the work you've done on mentorship and the work you're doing. I mean, people are going to love the presentation. I can't wait to see you at TLC.
Me too. Glad to thank you for the invite, Jim. Appreciate it.